The rain didn't start until after the bags were already packed. Miriam Ellison stood at the edge of her porch watching as her daughter's SUV reversed out of the gravel driveway with a soft hiss. The taillights blinked red once, then disappeared behind the curtain of June rain. She hadn't brought an umbrella. They hadn't offered her one. She was still in her slippers. The front door clicked shut behind her, not from her own hand, but from her granddaughter, Callie, who had gently urged her inside with a forced smile and trembling voice. "Just for a little while, Grandma, so you can rest. Mom says it'll help." That was 3 days ago. Miriam sat now on a stiff twin mattress inside a room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and something sweeter, maybe lavender or old candy wrappers. She couldn't tell. It wasn't her scent. It wasn't her bed. It wasn't her room. None of this was hers. She had not agreed to be here. That much she knew. The nurse's name was Janice. She had kind eyes, but never met them for long. Always looking down at her clipboard, always saying things like, "Just temporary, and your daughter says this is best." Best for whom? Miriam hadn't fainted. She hadn't fallen. She hadn't forgotten to pay her bills. She cooked, cleaned, managed her prescriptions better than most 30-year-olds could manage their inbox. The only thing she was guilty of was slowing down. But slowing down wasn't the same as falling apart. Not that anyone seemed interested in the difference. It started a few weeks earlier softly the way storms do, not with a crash, but with a shift in air pressure. Her daughter, Rachel, had started visiting more often, asking little questions. Did she feel safe going up and down the stairs? Had she considered getting one of those personal alarm necklaces? Maybe a part-time caregiver just to check in? Miriam knew the dance, knew the way concern could morph into control. She remembered it from when she had taken care of her own mother. Except back then, love looked like carrying her up the stairs, not boxing her away from them. "I'm fine, Rachel," she had said, gently but firmly, 3 separate times. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm still sharp as a tack." Rachel would smile and nod, but her fingers would tighten around her coffee cup, the worry not fading, only shifting behind her eyes. Miriam thought it was love. She didn't see the plan forming until it was too late. On the morning of the move, because now she could only call it that in hindsight, Rachel had brought Callie with her. Callie was 13, all long limbs and hesitant eyes. She had inherited her grandmother's cheekbones and her mother's silence. That morning, she helped carry bags to the car without saying much. Miriam had thought they were going on a trip, a spa weekend maybe. That's what Rachel had said. "You deserve to be pampered, Mom. You've done enough. Let someone take care of you now." But she never told Miriam to pack her knitting, or her books, or the gardening gloves she used every morning at sunrise. Just a few things, and don't worry, we'll come back for the rest. It wasn't until they pulled up to the facility's Serenity Pines that Miriam knew. "I'm not staying here," Miriam had whispered as the car came to a stop. Rachel didn't look at her. "You're just resting. We'll talk again in a few days." "You tricked me." "It's not a trick, Mom. It's a transition." Callie had looked like she wanted to speak. Miriam could see it, the tight lips, the darting eyes, the clenched fists in her lap, but no words came out. That silence hurt worse than anything else. Rachel got out, opened Miriam's door, and gently took her by the arm. "You signed the papers already," she said softly. "No, I didn't." Rachel held up a stack of forms. "We did it together last week, remember, after lunch?" Miriam blinked. "That was for the power bill." "No, Mom, that was this." A nurse appeared by the entrance, smiling too wide. "Welcome to Serenity Pines, Miss Ellison. We've got your room ready. Just a short stay, I promise." Now, 3 days later, Miriam sat in that room, replaying the conversation like a cracked record. Her body was fine. Her mind was sharp. But her voice, her right to speak, to decide, had been taken smoothed over with paperwork and polite nods. She looked at the pen sitting on her side table and picked it up. She opened the notebook the nurse had given her for daily reflections. Most residents doodled or wrote poems or scribbled letters to people who no longer answered. But Miriam didn't write poems. She wrote war strategies. Rachel's bank account routing number still tied to the joint grocery fund Miriam had helped manage after Rachel's divorce. The deed to the house technically still in Miriam's name. The transfer hadn't gone through. Her power of attorney suspiciously signed but likely contestable. Her lawyer Eleanor Vance last spoken to 2 Christmases ago but still on speed dial. or she would be once Miriam got her phone back. She wrote everything she could remember because no one was coming to rescue her, and because she had rescued herself before. At midnight that night, Miriam heard a soft knock at her window. She turned her head slowly. It was Callie, soaked in rain hood over her face, standing under the weak porch light outside her grandmother's window. In her hand was a white envelope. Callie pressed it gently against the glass, then backed away into the shadows. Miriam stood, walked to the window, opened it slowly, and took the envelope. Inside was a folded note in careful teenage handwriting. "Grandma, I didn't know they weren't coming back. I thought you did. I'm sorry. Please don't stop fighting. You're not crazy. I see you." Miriam's hands trembled, but not from weakness, from awakening. They thought she would fade away quietly. But Miriam Ellison was not made of shadows. She was about to become the storm. Morning came quietly, like it always does in places designed to make people forget what day it is. Serenity Pines didn't have loud alarms or barking orders, just soft piano music playing from invisible speakers and caregivers with too much cheer in their voices. They called everyone sweetheart or hon like it could somehow patch over the silence of abandonment. But Miriam Ellison didn't wake to the music. She woke to the letter. Callie's note sat beside her bed, a small white flag of loyalty folded in her trembling hands. Miriam had read it at least a dozen times before dawn, memorizing each curve of her granddaughter's penmanship like it was scripture. "Please don't stop fighting. You're not crazy. I see you." That one line clung to her ribcage like armor. At breakfast, Miriam didn't touch the scrambled eggs. They looked like foam and smelled faintly of freezer burn. She pushed them aside and sipped her weak tea. Around her, people murmured, some at each other, some at the air. A woman in the corner was humming to herself, rocking gently. Miriam studied them not with pity, but with clarity. She was not like them. But if Rachel got her way, she would be. By late morning, she requested a meeting with the facility administrator. The woman, Ms. Harmon, was in her early 50s, brisk, tight-lipped, and clearly used to complaints from families, not from residents. Miriam sat across from her, spine, straight hands folded calmly in her lap. "There's been a mistake," she began. Ms. Harmon gave her a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're aware that transitions can be emotionally difficult. I'm not talking about emotions. I'm talking about consent. I never agreed to be here." The administrator blinked. "You signed the admittance papers." "I didn't. My daughter claims I did, but I believe she forged them." There was a long pause. Ms. Harmon reached for a folder on her desk, opened it, and flipped to a form with a signature line. "Is this your name?" Miriam leaned forward. It was her name. But the handwriting was too tight, too smooth. It lacked the slight rightward slant her signature had always carried. She narrowed her eyes. "That's not mine." "Well," Ms. Harmon said carefully, "your daughter also holds your medical power of attorney, which gives her the right to make decisions on your behalf." "I never signed over power of attorney." "You did, a few months ago." "No. I signed a release so Rachel could talk to my insurance provider about billing. That's not the same." The administrator frowned slightly, her confidence slipping. Miriam smiled, not wide, not smug. "Just enough. I'd like to speak with my lawyer." "That's not standard procedure for our residents, Ms. Ellison." "Then maybe you should update your standards." That afternoon, Miriam slipped into the community room and asked to use the phone at the front desk. The nurse hesitated. "Just a quick call," Miriam said softly. "It's my granddaughter's birthday tomorrow. I want to leave her a message." That wasn't a lie. She just didn't say which granddaughter. Eleanor Vance hadn't heard from Miriam in years, but her voice was still calm, clipped and cool on the other end of the line. "Miriam," she said, her tone shifting immediately. "What happened?" Miriam kept it short. She gave her the basics, the facility, the papers she never signed, the daughter who decided too old meant too irrelevant. And she mentioned the name on the deed, still hers. Eleanor didn't ask many questions, just wrote down the address and said, "I'll call you tomorrow." And Miriam, "Yes, don't let them rattle you. We've fought bigger than this before." That night, Miriam slept with the phone next to her chest and Callie's letter under her pillow. The next morning, a staff member knocked on her door. It wasn't Janice. It was a new nurse, younger, a little too upbeat for Miriam's taste. "You have a visitor," she said with surprise. "Who?" "She says she's your attorney." Miriam smiled. "Good." Eleanor walked in wearing a navy blazer, no-nonsense flats, and an expression that could slice through red tape like a hot knife through butter. She sat across from Miriam in the lounge and pulled out a manila folder. "I pulled your case," she said. "The power of attorney is shaky at best. It was submitted without a notary and witnessed only by Rachel's business partner, who also happens to be her fiancé." Miriam's eyebrows rose. "Fiancé?" Eleanor nodded. "It gets better. The house is still in your name. Rachel filed a transfer of ownership, but it was never recorded at the county level. Too many missing signatures. So she doesn't own it." "No, but she thinks she does. And the facility, they're operating in a legal gray zone. You're here based on Rachel's authority, but if that's invalid, they've got a big problem." Miriam sat back. "I want out. You'll have it. But first we need to set a few things in motion." They worked quietly. No confrontation, no dramatic shouting matches. Just legal threads being pulled one by one. Eleanor requested a cognitive evaluation done discreetly by an outside doctor. The results were clear. Miriam was competent, fully. She also filed an emergency injunction to block any further property transfer attempts and began collecting Rachel's communication records through discovery. Meanwhile, Miriam kept quiet. She ate her soggy eggs. She listened to the piano music. She folded sweaters and pretended to nap, because the best kind of revenge is the one you don't rush. And Miriam Ellison had learned patience from decades of single motherhood late rent, and Sunday mornings spent waiting for buses that never came. On the third day, a small envelope appeared under her breakfast tray. Callie again. This time it held a picture, a photo of Miriam in her backyard watering her azaleas taken just a month before. On the back was a scribbled note. "You look strong here." "You still are." Miriam closed her eyes and breathed in the words. They didn't steal her voice. They didn't bury her life. They just reminded her how powerful it is to take it back. And the taking, it was just getting started. By the time the results of Miriam's cognitive assessment came back, Serenity Pines had started to treat her differently. It was subtle, like the way shadows stretch before a storm. Fewer wellness checks, more hesitation when staff referred to Rachel as her primary contact. One nurse even asked softly, "Would you like us to call someone else for your errands?" Miriam just smiled, not yet, because soon the only calls being made would come from lawyers, not nurses. And her daughter was going to have to answer every single one. On Friday morning, the clouds over Serenity Pines finally broke, spilling golden light across the hedges and courtyard. Miriam requested her favorite seat by the window for morning tea, the one that faced the back garden. From there, she could watch other residents shuffle quietly or stare at birds they could no longer name. But Miriam wasn't watching birds. She was watching patterns. Every time the front desk took a call, she noted it. Every time staff whispered to each other while looking her way, she logged the time. Control wasn't about shouting. It was about seeing more than they thought you saw. Eleanor arrived just before noon. This time she didn't come alone. A young paralegal followed her into the facility with a leather briefcase and a clipboard. They moved through the hallway like a quiet army. They met Miriam in the staff conference room, one of those sterile, underused places with motivational posters on the wall and a permanently faint smell of whiteboard cleaner. "We're ready," Eleanor said, flipping open her folder. "I've filed a temporary restraining order blocking Rachel from accessing your account's property or medical files." Miriam blinked. That fast. Eleanor smiled. You don't spend 20 years protecting women from predatory caregivers without learning a few tricks. The paralegal placed another folder in front of Miriam. "This is a revocation form. You're formally rescinding any power of attorney Rachel claims to hold. Once this is signed and filed, the facility can no longer legally defer to her on your care." Miriam didn't hesitate. Her pen glided across the paper, her signature curling like it always did, rightward, elegant, deliberate. The paralegal notarized it on the spot. 2 hours later, the administrator at Serenity Pines called Rachel. Miriam didn't need to hear the conversation. She could feel it through the walls. The raised voices, the disbelief, the part where Rachel accused the facility of manipulation, the part where she threatened lawsuits, and finally the part where Ms. Harmon told her very calmly that her authority had been revoked and she was no longer listed on any of Miriam's legal documentation. That night, Miriam had chamomile tea on the patio with Eleanor. She watched the sun dip behind the trees. "I should be angry," Miriam murmured. "You're not. I'm sad." Rachel used to be the little girl who braided my hair while I paid bills at the kitchen table. Now she's the woman who forged my name. She underestimated you. Everyone does. That's their mistake. Eleanor paused. "You know, if we wanted to, we could go beyond this. Sue for elder abuse, file criminal charges. I have connections." Miriam looked out at the darkening sky. "I'm not ready for war," she said, "but I'm ready to reclaim what's mine." On Sunday, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. Not Rachel. It was Callie. She stood at the entrance clutching a duffel bag and a library book like shields. Her hoodie was too big, her sneakers scuffed. Miriam saw the nerves in her jaw, the slight twitch in her lips she used to get when she was 4, and about to confess to hiding cookies under her bed. "Grandma," she asked. Miriam stepped out into the reception. Callie's eyes welled up. "I didn't know, I swear. I thought it was just a rest thing, like a wellness stay. That's what Mom told me." Miriam softened. "I know. I wanted to see you." "I'm glad you did." They sat in the courtyard under the shade of an elm tree. Callie pulled out a small notebook from her bag, red with a gold elastic strap. She handed it to Miriam. "I've been writing everything I hear at home," she said, "just in case it helps." Miriam opened it slowly. Inside were pages of notes, Rachel's conversations with her fiancé, dates, times, mentions of money moving, real estate agents, private conversations Callie overheard when they thought she was asleep. It was like reading a map of betrayal. "I thought, if you ever needed to prove something..." Miriam blinked back, something sharp in her eyes. "You did this for me." Callie shrugged. "I didn't know what else to do." Miriam leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "This notebook," she whispered, "is going to change everything." That evening, she called Eleanor. They'd had a plan, but now with Callie's notebook, they had proof. Not just forged documents or misused authority. They had intent. Rachel hadn't acted out of concern. She acted out of convenience. To free up a house, to consolidate control, to tuck Miriam away quietly, while building a life with someone who'd clearly taught her how to cut corners with a smile. Eleanor listened to the whole story. "Then we're moving forward," she said. "With what?" "With a petition for immediate release and restitution. And once you're out, we take the house back. Or better, sell it right from under her." Miriam said nothing. Then she asked quietly, "Can I stay with you for a while after I leave here?" Eleanor paused. "You don't want to go back home?" "No, not yet. I don't want to return. I want to reinvent." There was a beat of silence. "Then let's help you do just that." As night fell over Serenity Pines, Miriam closed Callie's notebook and placed it gently in her lap. They thought they had erased her. They didn't know she'd spent a lifetime making miracles out of crumbs and silence. This wasn't a comeback. This was a new beginning. On Monday morning, Serenity Pines smelled like wet carpet and oatmeal. Miriam had grown used to the rhythm by now, the mechanical kindness, the sound of soft slippers dragging down linoleum floors, the squeak of medication carts at sunrise. But this Monday felt different, because today Miriam Ellison was no longer a passive name on a form. She was a plaintiff, and Rachel, she was about to be served. Eleanor's paralegal arrived that morning with a black folder tucked under one arm and a stack of legal envelopes under the other. "We filed the petition at 8:15 a.m., he whispered to Miriam. "Your daughter will be notified by certified courier within the hour." "What happens after that?" Miriam asked, sipping her lukewarm tea with a steadiness that surprised even her. "She'll have 10 days to respond before we initiate a full motion for restitution and temporary injunction over the property. But we are also adding a motion for your immediate release today, based on competency and unlawful detainment." In other words, he smiled. "You could be out by the end of the week." Rachel didn't take the news quietly. Miriam didn't witness the outburst, but the front desk nurse did. According to the staff, Rachel showed up at Serenity Pines mid-morning, demanding to see her mother. We're no longer authorized to allow that, the receptionist had told her. "Don't play games with me, that's my mother. And she's a legally competent adult who has revoked your authority." Rachel had left in a huff, threatening lawsuits claiming defamation, muttering about how her mother had always been difficult. Miriam heard about the scene from the janitor, who recounted it like local gossip with a smirk. "She looks like a wet cat in a Chanel blazer," he said, yelled all the way back to the parking lot. Miriam smiled politely and said nothing, because Rachel yelling wasn't the real victory. It was Rachel being seen for who she was, finally by someone other than family. That afternoon, Eleanor returned with 2 major updates. First, the facility had agreed to Miriam's release pending paperwork and escort. Second, the legal team had secured a freeze on the joint bank account Miriam shared with Rachel, after Eleanor submitted documentation proving her client's ongoing mental competence and recent financial irregularities. "Your daughter moved over $11,000 in 2 weeks," Eleanor said, all categorized as home improvement and travel. "I haven't traveled in 5 years," Miriam said, "and the house didn't need a damn thing. We're going to get it all back, but I need you to make one more call." "To who?" "Your insurance company. Tell them to stop any claim payments tied to your care. Rachel's probably using them to funnel support costs." Miriam didn't hesitate. She made the call. She gave her name, her ID number, her confirmation of location, and told the agent firmly, "I am of sound mind, and I do not authorize any reimbursements for care I did not agree to." There was a pause on the other end. "Thank you for confirming, Ms. Ellison," the agent said. "We've had some unusual claims come through recently. We'll flag your account." Miriam hung up and leaned back in her chair. This wasn't just fighting back anymore. It was stitching her name back onto the parts of her life someone else had tried to erase. On Thursday, Callie visited again. This time, she brought more than just a notebook. She brought Rachel's laptop. She left it open, Callie said. "I'm not proud, but I checked her email. I forwarded everything I thought you'd want." Miriam's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Callie pulled out a flash drive. There were emails between her and a real estate agent. She listed your house for sale. What? She called it a pre-inheritance transition, said you were being moved into full-time care and wouldn't need the property anymore. Miriam's hands shook, not from fear, but from something colder. "They were going to sell it before I even left this place." Callie nodded. "I'm so sorry, Grandma." Miriam looked at her granddaughter, all spine and guilt and quiet loyalty. "Don't be. You just gave us the final nail for their coffin." That night, Miriam called Eleanor and told her about the flash drive. "I'll have our forensic tech run a copy," Eleanor said. "If we can verify the chain of communication, we've got grounds for criminal misrepresentation, maybe even fraud with intent. Will that slow down the process? Maybe, but it'll ensure Rachel never gets a dime." Miriam was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, "Can we sell the house before she can—" "Yes," Eleanor said, without missing a beat. "And if we do it right, she won't even get to say goodbye to the garden." Miriam grinned just slightly. "Good. I never liked how she trimmed the hydrangeas anyway." By Friday afternoon, Serenity Pines was officially no longer her address. Eleanor met her at the front desk with a stack of signed orders and a new suitcase. "You're free to go, Ms. Ellison," the nurse said, visibly relieved. "We wish you the very best." Miriam didn't look back as she walked through the sliding glass doors. She had come in with slippers and confusion. She left with documents and fire. They didn't drive to her old home. Instead, Eleanor took her to a furnished apartment on the other side of town, temporary housing arranged through a friend at a legal aid group. It had sunlight, silence, and the smell of cinnamon from a candle on the counter. It wasn't home, but it was hers. Miriam walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, saw orange juice and yogurt. Someone had thought to stock it. There was a note on the table. "You're not starting over. You're resuming power. Welcome back, Evie." She sank into a chair and let her breath out. They had tried to bury her, but they didn't realize she kept receipts, and now it was her turn to collect. It started with a knock at Rachel's door. Not a dramatic pounding, just 2 sharp official-sounding raps at 7:08 a.m., when most people were still nursing their first coffee. Rachel opened it expecting a delivery. What she got instead was a process server in a gray windbreaker holding a thick envelope. "Rachel Monroe. Yes, you've been served." He handed her the envelope, turned on his heel, and walked back to his car without another word. Inside that envelope was a petition for revocation of real estate transfer notice of pending litigation and a court-mandated freeze on any attempt to sell, modify, or claim equity from the house at 403 Willowbrook Lane, the home that Miriam Ellison still legally owned. Rachel's scream echoed through the neighborhood. Back in her temporary apartment, Miriam didn't hear the scream, but she did see the text from Eleanor that morning. "It's done, house locked down. She can't touch it." Miriam stared at the message for a long time. The home she built, the mortgage she fought to pay off, the garden she had planted by hand, the floors she'd scrubbed on her knees while Rachel studied for college exams. It was all still hers. Not just legally, but rightfully. Later that day, Callie arrived at the apartment clutching a tote bag filled with clothes books and an old photo album. "Mom's losing it," she said, plopping onto the couch. Miriam handed her a glass of lemonade. "Tell me." "She thinks she's being framed, says you're manipulating the system. Blames me, blames everyone. She say what she was planning to do with the house." Callie nodded slowly. "She and Nick were going to sell it. Pay off his debts, then move into some condo near the lake. They were already looking at furniture catalogs." Miriam blinked. "Nick her fiancé?" "Not anymore," Callie muttered. "He bailed yesterday. Said he didn't want to be involved in a lawsuit." Miriam didn't smile. But she didn't frown either. That evening, Eleanor came over with a bottle of non-alcoholic cider and an updated legal brief. "Your daughter's officially been removed as your healthcare proxy and financial agent. We've also submitted the flash drive evidence to the DA's office. If they decide to prosecute, it's on them. But either way, you're clear." "What about the house?" Miriam asked. "Well," Eleanor said with a glint in her eye, "we've initiated a partition petition. That means she'll be forced to either buy you out or vacate." "She can't afford a buyout." "Exactly. So she'll have to leave." Eleanor nodded. "The courts are on your side now. You can either return to the house or force a sale and walk away with every cent." Miriam stirred her tea. "I don't want to go back." "You sure?" "I want a new view. One she can see from her front porch." Eleanor laughed. "You're dangerous." "No, I'm done being quiet." 2 weeks later, the court ruled in Miriam's favor. Rachel had no legal grounds to remain in the home, no authority to act on her mother's behalf, and no ability to delay the sale. She was given 30 days to vacate. The official notice was taped to the front door by the sheriff's office. Callie took a photo and sent it to Miriam with a simple message. She finally saw it. Miriam didn't respond right away. She was in the kitchen kneading dough for sweet rolls, humming an old tune her own mother used to sing. Peace didn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrived with quiet satisfaction and flour on your hands. That weekend they toured houses, not with a realtor, with purpose. Miriam knew exactly what she was looking for, a one-story home, modest but sunny, with a porch that faced Rachel's kitchen window. A reminder, a presence. She found it on Sycamore Lane. Cozy white siding, a cherry tree out front, back patio that opened toward her old backyard. It wasn't pettiness. It was poetic placement. Eleanor arranged the paperwork. Miriam paid in cash. No mortgage. No name but hers. On move-in day, Miriam wore her favorite wide-brimmed hat and a pair of floral gloves. Callie helped unload the boxes. Eleanor brought a lemon cake. And across the street, Rachel stood frozen behind her living room curtains, watching it all unfold. Miriam didn't wave. She just walked to the edge of her new lawn, planted a rose bush right by the mailbox, and whispered, "Let's bloom, darling." That evening, Callie stayed for dinner. They sat on lawn chairs on the back porch, the house behind them still echoing with unpacked silence. Grandma Callie said, "I don't think I want to go back home." "You don't have to. Mom said I betrayed her." She betrayed herself. Callie looked down. "Will it ever be normal again?" Miriam reached over and took her hand. "No, but maybe it'll be better." Later that night, Miriam stood at the kitchen sink staring out the window. Rachel's porch light flickered on. The front door opened. For a moment, just a second, Rachel stepped outside. She looked tired, as if the weight of everything she'd taken was finally pressing down on her. She looked across the street. Miriam didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stood still like a woman who had already reclaimed everything that mattered. The first few mornings in her new house were silent, not lonely, just clean. No whispering staff, No beige walls, no buzz of electric beds, or the subtle condescension of being called sweetheart by someone 40 years younger. Just the creak of old floorboards, the smell of fresh paint and birdsong at the back window. It was freedom, and Miriam wasn't wasting it. She rearranged furniture exactly how she liked it. She framed a photo of Callie planting the first rose bush. She even baked a pie from scratch. The smell of cinnamon drifted through the house like a benediction. Peace had weight to it, and Miriam was finally learning how to carry it. Callie came over most evenings now. She'd started walking instead of getting dropped off. Said it cleared her head. They would sit on the back porch watching the sky shift from gold to violet. I told Mom I was staying here for the week, Callie said on Thursday. She slammed the door. She angry at you or at herself? Miriam asked. Both. She said you brainwashed me. Miriam laughed. A small, honest sound. I didn't need to. You just opened your eyes. Callie shrugged. She said you're trying to punish her. I'm not. Are you sure? Miriam looked out over her small but blooming backyard. The roses were already taking to the soil. I'm just finally living without permission. But Rachel wasn't done. She couldn't let it go. On Saturday, Callie came by with a tight face and red-rimmed eyes. She called the school, she said, dropping her bag by the door. What? She's trying to have me pulled out. Said she's filing for full custody again, claims you're manipulating me. Miriam's jaw tightened. You're not a toddler. You're 13. She says I'm confused, that you've turned me against her. Miriam poured her a glass of water and waited. There's more, Callie whispered. She's threatening to move out of state. Take me with her. Miriam sat very still. Then she's bluffing. How do you know? Because no one who wins makes that much noise. That night, Eleanor called. We've received a request for mediation, she said. Rachel's trying to settle out of court before the full house sale proceeds. What does she want? She wants to keep 30% of the equity. Miriam scoffed. No. She's claiming emotional investment, long-term intent, and indirect contributions through caregiving. She locked me in a care facility and tried to sell the house while I was still in a bed I didn't choose. I know, Eleanor said, and the judge will too. What's our move? We deny the mediation, push for court-ordered sale, maximize exposure. Miriam took a deep breath. She's also using Callie, she said quietly. I figured, Eleanor replied, but we can get ahead of it. How? We file a motion with the family court. You're not seeking custody, just protection. We show that Callie is safe with you enrolled in school and not under duress. We bring the journals, the laptop, everything. Miriam didn't hesitate. Do it. By Tuesday, Rachel had escalated. She showed up outside Miriam's house, honking the horn. Miriam didn't flinch. She stood on the porch, arms folded calm as Sunday morning. Rachel got out, marched across the lawn. You think you've won, she hissed. You think this is over? Miriam said nothing. You stole my daughter. She's not an object, Miriam said quietly. She's mine. No, she's herself. And she's watching you destroy every good thing you ever had. You're poisoning her. I'm reminding her what safety feels like. Rachel's voice cracked. You ruined my life. No, Rachel. I protected mine. There was nothing left to say. Rachel left. Callie stood behind the curtains watching. Later that week, a letter arrived from the court. The house was to be sold in 30 days. Proceeds split in accordance with documented ownership 100% to Miriam Ellison. Rachel had no right, no claim, no case. She didn't appeal. She didn't have the strength anymore. Miriam sat in her garden that evening. Callie was next to her sketching flowers on a blank page. Do you think she'll leave? Callie asked. I think she already has, Miriam replied. She's still in the house. She's not in your heart anymore. That's where it starts. Callie nodded. I want to stay with you. Miriam took her hand. Then you will. That night, Miriam opened her old notebook, the one from Serenity Pines. She flipped past the legal notes, the transactions, the phone numbers, and on the last page, she wrote one line in thick, confident strokes. She tried to bury me under guilt. I came back with the deed. The house sold faster than anyone expected. It was a bidding war, actually. The property was well kept despite the secrets its walls held, and the neighborhood was known for its tree-lined quiet and tidy lawns. Two young couples, a retired military family, and a tech consultant all placed bids in the first 48 hours. In the end, it went to a school teacher and her wife. Full asking price, cash, no contingencies. Rachel didn't show up for the final walkthrough. She didn't have to. By then, she'd already packed most of her belongings in boxes with no labels, no real destination. A neighbor mentioned seeing her loading a rental van by herself, face-pale movements hurried. No goodbye. No note. Just absence, sudden and silent. Miriam sat at the title company with Eleanor the next morning. The closing was quick, clean, just signatures and handshakes and a check that confirmed what Miriam already knew. She hadn't just reclaimed the house, she had reclaimed the narrative. Callie waited at the apartment with balloons. "Did it go through?" she asked, already smiling. Miriam held up the check. "Every penny." "Can we get a new fridge now?" Callie teased. "We can get a new life." Callie's smile faded into something softer. "I like the one we're building." "So do I." That weekend, Miriam called a meeting at the community center. She'd spoken with Eleanor about it before, but now that the funds were in hand, she made it official. She didn't want to just win. She wanted to make sure no one else had to fight this hard to do so. And so the Mayfield Foundation was born, named after her mother, who had once raised 3 girls on a laundromat income and bruised knees. The mission was simple: to protect elder women from financial abuse, manipulation, and abandonment. The start a $50,000 seed donation, the exact amount Rachel had tried to siphon from Miriam's accounts over the years. Let it be put to better use. The announcement hit the local paper. A reporter from the neighborhood blog wrote a short feature. She was sent to a nursing home without her consent, then fought back and built a legacy. The article went viral in the county. By Monday, other women had started calling the foundation hotline. One of them was 76. Her daughter had rerouted her pension. Another was 82, being pressured to sign over property she didn't understand. Miriam listened to each voice, took notes, connected them to resources. She didn't give advice. She gave options. That was power. Rachel didn't call, but she did send an email. Subject line for Callie: no body text, just a forwarded plane ticket confirmation one way to Texas. Miriam stared at it for a long while. Then she clicked block. Callie didn't cry when she found out. She just said, "Figures. She didn't ask you to come." "No, and I wouldn't have gone." "You sure?" Callie looked her grandmother dead in the eyes. "I am sure, for once." The next weekend, Miriam and Callie moved into the Sycamore Lane house full-time. No more apartments, no more temporary fixes. This was theirs. Miriam bought new drapes ones with sunflowers. Callie picked the paint for the kitchen buttercream yellow. "I want it to feel warm," she said. "It already does," Miriam replied. One afternoon, while pruning the roses, Miriam noticed a card tucked under her porch planter. It was handwritten, no envelope. "We've been watching. We're proud of you. Thank you for proving that quiet doesn't mean weak. Your neighbors on Willowbrook Lane." She didn't need a signature. She already knew. That night, Callie curled up on the couch beside her. "I want to study law," she said out of nowhere. Miriam looked over. "Really?" "Yeah, I want to do what Eleanor does." "She's good. You're better." Miriam smiled. "If that's what you want, I'll back you. All the way." "You already do." The roses out front began to bloom wild, as if they understood they were finally rooted somewhere safe. Miriam watered them each morning before the sun got too high. She didn't look over to the old house anymore. There was nothing left to see. She wasn't defined by what she lost. She was building from what she kept and what she gave. The invitation arrived in a plain white envelope tucked neatly between a credit union flyer and a local pizza coupon. Miriam almost missed it. It was from the County Council on Aging, asking if she would speak at their annual Elder Justice Summit. Not as a victim, that word never quite fit, but as a voice. A woman who had lived through the quiet betrayal that too many others suffered in silence. She almost said no, but Callie saw the letter and lit up. "You have to do it," she said. "You have to." "I'm not a speaker," Miriam replied. "You didn't have to be. You already changed my life just by telling me the truth." So Miriam said yes. Not because she needed to be celebrated, but because the story needed to be told out loud once for all the women who didn't get the chance. The day of the summit, she wore navy slacks and a soft linen blouse. Nothing dramatic, but she did pin her mother's brooch to the collar, a silver oak leaf with a pearl at its base. "Let them underestimate you," her mother once said. "It'll make the victory sweeter." She stood at the podium in a local conference room filled with folding chairs and coffee urns. Dozens of faces looked up, most of them lined with years, marked with quiet wisdom, pain, and a longing to be seen. Miriam cleared her throat. My name is Miriam Ellison. I'm 72 years old. Last year, my daughter tried to erase me while smiling to my face. There was no microphone feedback, no coughs, just stillness. I was placed into care without my consent, locked away behind signatures I never gave. They took my name off the mailbox, off the bank accounts, off the story I was still writing. A few women nodded. One clutched a tissue. But I didn't disappear. I remembered who I was, and then I reminded them. She spoke for 15 minutes. No theatrics, no speeches rehearsed in the mirror. Just truth wrapped in every scar she'd earned and every breath she refused to surrender. When she finished, the room stood to applaud. Some were crying. One woman came up to her afterward and simply whispered, "Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy." That was enough. The story made its way around town again. Not viral this time, organic. People whispered it in grocery lines. A woman who fought back. A woman who didn't scream but won anyway. That same week, Callie faced her own test. Her best friend Ava confronted her in the school hallway between lockers. "My mom said your grandma lied to the courts," Ava said bluntly. "She didn't." "Well, your mom's version is different." Callie stood there, backpack heavy, voice steady. "Because my mom made her version up so she didn't have to face what she did." Ava rolled her eyes. "It's just, you didn't tell me all this was happening." Callie blinked. "I didn't even know what was happening to me. Not until I left." A pause. "I didn't mean to lose you as a friend," Callie added. Ava's voice dropped. "I didn't mean to believe my mom over you." And that was that. Not everything healed with one sentence. But truth had a way of shaking things loose. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mailbox. Not from Rachel, from someone else. No return address. Miriam opened it slowly. "You don't know me, but I was in the same nursing home you were. Serenity Pines. 2 doors down from you. I heard what happened. I saw the day your lawyer came. You inspired me. I left 3 weeks after you did. I got help. I went home. Thank you. I never said hello. But I heard you humming that gospel song once in the hallway. It stayed with me. Please keep fighting. We're still watching. Evelyn." Miriam folded the letter carefully. Callie found her sitting by the window, eyes soft. "Something wrong?" "No," Miriam said. "Something's right." That evening, Miriam pulled out the notebook again, the one from the facility, the one that had begun as a lifeline and now felt more like a compass. On the last page, under her earlier entry, she added, "You never know who you're saving when you refuse to disappear." She and Callie baked cookies that night. Real butter. No shortcuts. Miriam taught her how to measure brown sugar packed, not loose. "How come no one ever taught Mom?" that Callie asked. Miriam smiled faintly. She didn't want to learn from me, but I do. And that was enough. Outside, the roses bloomed in 3 shades, now red, white, and pale lavender. Miriam had planted them in stages, one for her, past one for her present one, for what was still to come. She didn't water them all the same. Each needed something different, and she had finally learned how to give it. On a mild Thursday morning, Miriam stood at the bank with Eleanor by her side. She was dressed in soft gray, her brooch pinned over her heart like always. The teller recognized her from the paper. "I read your story," the young woman said softly. "My grandma went through something similar." Miriam smiled kindly. Then I hoped she had someone to help her. They were there to finalize the Ellison Trust, a legal structure that would hold the assets Miriam had spent a lifetime building. Her modest savings, the sale of her old home, the new house, and a scholarship fund Callie had helped name. The Rose Window Fund. Because strength grows in sunlight, Callie had said. It wasn't just for her. It was for other girls who had seen too much silence. Girls with grit in their bones and kindness no one ever taught them to use as a shield. It would fund 2 full scholarships per year, one for law, one for social work. "You're not building a legacy," Eleanor had said. "You're building an echo." That same afternoon, Callie came home holding something wrapped in a grocery bag. "I found this at the library book sale," she said. "I think it's, I don't know, important." Miriam peeled back the plastic. It was an old photo album, worn leather. Inside were pictures black and white, mostly of her own mother, aunts, and cousins on a front porch in Alabama. She hadn't seen it in 50 years. "I thought this was lost," she whispered. One picture caught her attention. Her mother standing with a protest sign in her hand. It read, "We care for the world. Who cares for us?" Callie traced the words with her finger. She was strong. She was silent but not afraid. "Like you." "No," Miriam said, eyes soft. "Better. I had more tools." She had nothing but her voice and her feet. Callie was quiet for a while. "I want to use my voice," she said. "Like you did." The next day, someone knocked on the door. It wasn't a neighbor. It was Reverend Palmer, a man Miriam hadn't seen in a decade. "I've been following your story," he said, gripping his hat. "I know we weren't close, but I have a request." She let him in. "My sister's being taken advantage of by her daughter," he said. "She won't speak up. She's scared. But I thought maybe if she heard from you." Miriam didn't hesitate. "When can I meet her?" That evening, as Miriam prepared a batch of lemon bars to bring to the meeting, her phone lit up with a text from a number she had once deleted. "Rachel, I read the article. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." No signature, just bitterness carved into every word. Miriam stared at it for a long time. She didn't cry, she didn't shake, but this time she didn't ignore it either. She opened the reply field and typed slowly. "You don't get to rewrite what you erased. I did what you never expected. I stood up. Not for revenge, for restoration. I hope you find your way. But this door, it's closed." She hit send and then blocked the number. Again. That weekend, Miriam met Reverend Palmer's sister, Evelyn. Small woman, wispy hair, sharp eyes. They talked for hours over lemon bars and sweet tea. By the end of the conversation, Evelyn asked for Eleanor's number. "I want out," she said softly. "I thought I was too late." "You're right on time," Miriam replied. Callie sat with her that night under the porch light. "I think I want to tell our story," she said. "Which part?" "All of it. The nursing home, the roses, the notebook, me staying." "You want to write it." "I want to share it, for people who don't have grandmas like you." Miriam chuckled. "You sure that won't scare your teachers?" "They already think I'm intense." "They're not wrong." As the night cooled and the stars came out, Miriam pulled the old notebook from her lap. She flipped through every page, all the names, dates, facts, and feelings. At the very back, she began a new page. "This is not the story of how I was erased. This is the story of how I was remembered, starting with my own name." She passed the pen to Callie. "Your turn." Callie smiled, clicked the pen, and wrote her name underneath. The days grew longer. Not heavy, just full. Full of sunlit mornings and cinnamon-scented kitchens. Full of peace, which Miriam had learned didn't mean quiet. It meant absence of fear, of uncertainty, of the ache that comes from waiting on someone else to do right by you. She no longer waited. She simply lived. The garden outside her house had become more than a patch of flowers. It was now a patchwork of memory and intention. Red roses for everything she'd survived. White daisies for every truth she'd spoken. Lavender for every boundary she'd finally drawn. And a small bench. Callie had painted herself tucked under the cherry tree with a wooden sign that read, "This place grew stronger with every no one believed." Callie had started writing their story. It began as a school project, but her teachers shared it with the principal. Then the district asked to feature it on their website. Then a regional nonprofit for youth advocacy picked it up and offered Callie a scholarship. They said it's rare for someone so young to understand legacy. She told Miriam, cheeks flushed with pride. "I told them I didn't learn it. I watched it grow." One afternoon in early spring, a letter arrived. Handwritten, deliberate, the envelope thick with care. The return address said Serenity Pines Retirement Facility. But the name at the bottom made Miriam freeze. Evelyn Jameson. The woman who had slipped her the letter about hearing her gospel humming. The one who'd left shortly after Miriam's own escape. The one who'd never said hello but had listened. "Dear Miriam, I meant to write sooner. I just didn't know how to say thank you without sounding like a cliché. But today I looked out at my own small yard wild with dandelions and thought of you. You changed the air in that place. The day your lawyer came, the silence cracked. Not just for me, but for 3 others who filed petitions. I'm in my own place now, small, but mine. I volunteer at the senior center once a week. Your story was a spark. Just wanted you to know. Some people grow roses, some people grow courage. You did both. With love, Evelyn." Miriam read the letter twice. Then she folded it, tucked it into the back of her old notebook, and placed the notebook in her cedar chest. Not because she was done writing, but because the writing had done its job. On a soft April morning, Callie stood in front of a group of younger girls at the community center. She was leading a teen workshop, now co-sponsored by the Mayfield Foundation. The girls, most from foster care or rough homes, leaned in as she spoke. "My grandma used to say we don't disappear unless we let go of our own name. So the first thing I'm going to ask you today is this. What's your name? And what do you want it to mean when people say it after you've left the room?" In the back of the room, Miriam sat quietly sipping her tea. She didn't need to say a word. She had already planted the seeds. Later that night, as they cleared the dinner table, Callie looked up suddenly. "Do you think she ever loved me?" she asked. It was the question neither of them had dared speak aloud, until now. Miriam didn't answer right away. Then she said gently, "I think she tried to, in the only way she knew how. But loving someone doesn't mean you know how to protect them. Does that mean I have to forgive her? No, it means you get to decide what you carry and what you plant." Callie nodded slowly. "I'm planting truth." On the anniversary of the day Miriam had been sent away, they didn't mourn. They baked a pie. They sat on the porch. They lit a candle not for loss, but for resilience. And they invited 2 new neighbors over, a young mother with her son, an elderly woman who lived alone. They shared stories. They shared banana bread. They shared silence, the warm kind, the safe kind, the kind Miriam once thought she'd never feel again. At the end of that night, Miriam stood by her front window. She looked across the street. The old house had been painted a soft yellow by its new owners. Wind chimes danced on the porch. A rocking chair moved slightly in the breeze. There were no ghosts left, no bitterness, just distance and grace. She turned back inside, found Callie fast asleep with her sketch pad in her lap. She draped a quilt over her and whispered, "You'll be more than I ever imagined, and stronger than they ever deserved." Then she walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer where she kept her newest journal, and wrote the last line of this story. "They tried to bury me under silence, but I left them with a garden they'll never forget."